Ask the Podcast Coach for July 13th, 2019.
Let's get ready to podcast.
There it is. It's that music that means it's Saturday morning. It's time for Ask the Podcast Coach, where you get your podcast questions answered live. I'm your host, Dave Jackson from the School of Podcasting.com, and joining me I don't know how to point anymore, somewhere over there is the one and only Jim Cullison from The Average Guy.tv. Jim, how's it going, buddy?
Greetings, Dave. Happy Saturday morning to you. Always good to be back on Ask the Podcast Coach. One of those kind of funky mornings. You've had a bunch of hardware changes on your end and trying to get things all set up, and my voice isn't really working very well today, so I think we'll make it through. I think we'll be fine.
Yeah, I started off this morning and woke up early. This has been like the new thing. I find Saturdays are much more relaxing if I get up about 7 and go get some breakfast and start working on the show about 9. And so 9:30, I've got my questions done. I go to set things up in StreamYard, and StreamYard's like, hey, we can't see your microphone or your camera. Close those things that are using them, like Zoom or Skype. And I'm like, all right, Zoom is not running. Skype is always running in the background. So I go to my task manager, close Skype, reboot, refresh, whatever, tried Firefox. So I reached out to their tech support in being Saturday. It was like, our fastest way is via Facebook chat. I'm like, come on, Facebook chat. And so I was like, well, I guess we're going old school. And then I'll just point the live button or the live link to Google Hangouts. So if you're like going, hey, so if you're used to seeing your name pop up on screen, and I don't know that I can share my screen.
Yeah, no, you can still share here. Yeah.
So but I did just find out as we started this, we were talking about Google Hangouts going away, but we weren't sure when. Well, that stopped right now because as I hit go, it was like, hey, enjoy it because this is going away August 1st. And so
that's 3 weeks.
Yeah.
That's not very long.
Yeah. So which means I need to get up to speed on OBS probably or StreamYard.
Yeah, I think we've landed on, not we, I mean me and Gallup and some of those other things. I think we've kind of landed on StreamYard. I don't know why you wouldn't use it at this point. I mean, the scary thing about it, right, is it's a V1. They haven't really made many changes to it. I haven't seen many changes. Now, I have been getting emails from them asking for feedback. I did send them an email about, no, that was Otter that I sent the email to. So I hope that, I hope they can make this thing work. You know, after Blab kind of disappeared, you kind of go, oh, you guys gonna stay around for a little bit? I'd like to but Dave, I can't figure out too many reasons why not to just go to StreamYard. Super easy. Features are there. You can brand it the way you want to. It's $25 a month, or is it 20 or 25?
It's 25. Yeah.
Okay. And I think you can there's an annual plan and you get it a little bit cheaper or something like that. We've been using it now 4 or 5 weeks on the Gallup podcast. You and I have been using it for a while now, 6 weeks maybe.
Yeah. And this is really the first time we've had any kind of issue.
Yeah.
So but I guess my question is still, is it going to enable us to stream live on the YouTube?
I think it is. Yeah, because it connects through a different set of connectors to go to YouTube Live. And I think these Hangout pieces are what's going away. I think YouTube just wants to get a feed. Like, they don't want to host anymore. They're like, or Google is like, we don't want to host this thing anymore. We don't want to host all the bandwidth. And I do think that YouTube, was it youtube.com/webcam? Is that what it told you? I think we mentioned this the other day. I think they're really trying to switch everything over to WebRTC, and this is their first kind of run at it. And so get rid of this, no more plugins. It cripples Chrome. I mean, there's just a lot of things that they could benefit from if they went WebRTC. So I think we're going to see that coming.
Yeah, because my other thought would be, again, that we can kind of go wherever because we have askthepodcastcoach.com/live.
Right.
I thought of setting it up to where we went to Twitch. I thought, well, we might go, because I've always said the reason I'm not on Twitch right now is nobody's over there. I did some playing on Twitch, and I thought, well, we already kind of have our own crowd here. I know John is here and a couple other people in the chat room, Dave, Michael Ray. We'll all go over to Twitch. I thought about that, but Twitch has some weird, or in OBS especially, there are things like, I know the one like you could set up a tip jar, and I was playing with all that, and none of it looked remotely good. I did a couple things. I was like, all right, that's looking better, but it's like anything else. There was a learning curve, and that's why I just went, let's see, there's nobody over there at Twitch. StreamYard and YouTube is easy. Like, why am I banging my head?
It's drop dead easy. Like I since I've been working with it for the last 3 or 4 weeks, I can just not believe how easy it is. It's easier than Hangouts. And the reason I stayed on Hangouts was because it was easy. Like I wanted my guests to have an easy experience. In the early days, not everybody used Chrome. It was a little more difficult. You know, be like, oh, no, don't open that in Internet Explorer. Open that in Chrome. Like, what are you doing? But now I have very few problems. And you send that StreamYard link to people and they just open it. Like it just works, Dave. I mean, except for you this morning.
Yeah.
It just works. And people connect and they're like, oh, hey, I mean, it's funny to watch them come in, because the nice thing about StreamYard too is you get like a little green room area, right? Where people kind of come in and they sit before you let them join. A better thing for us too, if we had people calling in, you can kind of see who it is before you let them in, right?
Yeah.
That's kind of nice.
Yeah.
And but they said it's funny. They sit there, they come in, and then they look around. You know, they're like, "Where am I?" Because they're not in there. They're not. You know. So yeah, I think I'm gonna lobby to pay for it. So I think I'm going to get the premium version and get some branding on it, and see if we can get that paid for version.
You know what's fun is on occasion I will swap over to askthepodcastcoach.com/live, which is pointing at us on YouTube, and I'm watching you talk, but you're now like a bad Godzilla movie from the 70s.
Really?
No. It's you're fine.
Oh, I got okay, good.
But it's you talking, but it's like it's
30
not
seconds ago.
Yeah, 30 seconds ago,
30
exactly.
Seconds ago.
You can join if you go to askthepodcastcoach.com/join. You will pop right into this. So, but Miss Eileen says, hey, there is a learning curve to OBS, but she has tutorials, so maybe I'll have to do that. And Twitch probably. So I know Chris Curran is doing a thing. He's calling it the Podcasters Lounge, I think, on Wednesdays, and he's doing it on Twitch. And I just happened to stumble into that this week, and that was a lot of fun. Bandrew from Bandrew Says was there, and Chris is like, anybody got any old links from when you were in a band? Because Bandrew's a musician, so we're watching Jam and Dave Jackson from 2002 and all sorts of other.
I like Jam and Dave Jackson.
But
I like it.
So if you have a question, feel free to throw it in the chat room or just go to askthepodcastcoach.com/join. Jim, I did get this question. I thought it was interesting from Facebook. From Scott McKay says, what are the best ninja secrets for an in-episode promotion of your show's website? How do you get people to visit your page? Specifically, what do you say and where do you place your invitation? In the beginning, during, at the end, etc.? He says, I'm especially interested in hearing from those who have split tested this with measurable results. So this guy wants deep dives into this. But the thing that for me is when somebody says something that's visual. So let's say I was like, I'm talking to Jim and I'm like, I remember that one time Jim was getting stalked by a lion and we were pretty sure he was goners. We actually have video of that out at the website at askthepodcastcoach.com/259. I'm pretty sure a lot of people are going to go, wait, I got to go see that. So if you can give them a picture, or if we're talking about, Jim's talking about some new gadget and he's like, it is so small. If you want to see it, I've got a picture of it sitting next to an iPad out at the website at theaverageguy.tv. To me, that's how I get people to my website. Jim, any ideas that you do?
And just titling too. If you're, if you have a good, like you're saying, if you're saying it verbally, you can do it that way. I haven't done any A/B testing on that, Dave. So I wouldn't. I'd be a little scared to give any advice. I think there's no right time. There's just all the time, but you can't overdo it. So, bring it up in conversation. Just have it be a part of. I think if you get too obnoxious about it, it turns people off. If you don't say it enough, they won't remember it. It took my audience like 3 years to get theaverageguy.tv. I do not know. I thought that was kind of catchy. I thought, okay, theaverageguy.tv. People would come to me. They're like, okay, your site, you're the tech average guy, average tech Average Joe. I got that one a lot. Like, you're
Right.
the average Joe. No, it's the average guy. It's super simple. So you just have to keep saying it over and over and over. I've thought about changing the brand a little bit because the average guy, it didn't really land like I wanted it to. And things have changed since then, but they're just getting it now. Like, why would I, 7 years, 8 years later, you're like, oh, okay, I'm probably just going to stick with it. So I think you have to say it enough to keep it in the conscious. We do here. You mention it. You always mention it in the beginning for me, and then at the end. And I think that's plenty, right? For what we do.
Yeah. The other thing is, if you're trying to get people to your website, is just the good old fashioned lead magnet. People do that. They're like, oh, hey, I know Jordan Harbinger says, I think he does this for every episode, which I guess you can do if you're just doing podcasting full time. But it's like, hey, for the worksheet on this episode, go out to the website, yada, yada, yada. So it's always like some sort of call to action. If you want my 17 ways to cook shrimp, whatever it is your lead magnet is, something, again, it goes back to delivering value. So
I think we're going to be moving into an era over the next 10 years, less dependence on landing on websites, more audio, video on the phone. And I don't know. I think the days of giving people those kinds of things, paper tutorials, not paper literally, but
Right.
written tutorials, I think it's all going to YouTube, and everybody's just they're doing these things via YouTube. And so I think, that changes the way we look at things. So do we want to send them to our YouTube channel? That YouTube subscription is so strong now. It didn't used to be. YouTube subscription stuff used to be awful. And now it's really, really good. Very, very strong over there. Do we want to get them subscribed to the YouTube channel? Does that become kind of the most important landing spot for them? And then your website just becomes a component of your YouTube channel. I think that's worth considering. I mean, I think there may come a day when the landing page of your YouTube, artifacts, so the stuff that you make, is more important than your website. I know that's probably controversial, but I think we may be moving to that day.
Yeah, Miss Eileen says she has. I do not have tutorials on OBS, but she uses Ecamm Live or StreamYard to stream to Twitch. So I did not know you could go from StreamYard to Twitch. That's an interesting thought. Then,
yeah, right? Yeah, no, you don't. I don't think you have to use OBS for that. You could do it in StreamYard. They're getting
In August, we may kick the tires on that. That could be interesting. Then Dustin in the chat room says, I saw a post you did a couple of weeks ago on Podcast Studios as a business. Any follow up on that? I didn't get a lot of. I'd have to go back and find my Facebook post. Most of the people, I know there's one in Detroit. I think there's one in Austin, but some of the people that replied are like, yeah, we just started it and it's free. We're trying to get people. It's think, what's a bad analogy, but think drug dealer, right? Your first one's, your first hit of crack is free. Your second one, I'm going to charge you for. So let's get you podcasting. And then for the first month, it's free, or first 2 months, it's free. And then after that, it's something like that. I think the question is going to be, supply and demand. So if I'm in a little podunk town in Idaho that may not be super techy, are there going to be that many people that want to start a podcast? Now, on the flip side, the people that are there, if they're not that techy, may say, hey, this is great. I don't have to buy anything, and I can just go in and record. I think, and again, I have zero to base this on. I just think if people that are doing that, I don't think that's going to be an easy. I think editing audio is an easier way to get clients because you can edit audio from anybody around the world. Getting people in your location to go to a place where they can record, I think, is going to be a harder hill to climb. I don't know. What do you think, Jim?
Yeah, it's niche-y because it's local. It's a super niche, and I don't know. I was on, or I'm going to be on Jim Harold's Podlords podcast here in a couple weeks. We were talking yesterday, and he'd asked, "Is podcasting in a bubble?" And I kind of think we are in a little bit of a, we've had this anchor effect where it's kind of boosted. Anybody can podcast, and it's always been that way. Just to be honest, they've just advertised. They've put a ton of marketing into that. And I think we're going to see a lot of people, and there's a lot of need and a lot of clamor. And then I think there's going to be a lot of people who say, nah, I don't know. This is too hard. And I think that numbers bubble is going to burst a little bit. We'll go back to some more realistic numbers of podcasts being created. So I think if you were going to build a studio today based on this kind of bubble that we're in, I'd have a good exit strategy or a way to, because I don't know. You have to be in a big city. I mean, maybe in LA, maybe in New York.
That's what I was thinking. Somewhere, San Diego, Boston is pretty techy.
Dallas, some of those cities where, you can. New York could actually be a good market. A lot of people don't want to have that stuff, and everything is within a, it's sort of kind of within a walking or within a subway distance. But yeah, I don't know if I would go down that route today unless I had all the equipment and I had a space that I wasn't paying for and you just did it. I think, yeah, that could probably work.
Yeah. I think Anchor built a free studio in New York City. If I remember,
they did. I think they did.
Because I remember thinking, oh, wow, they're going to actually start making money. And then they're like, no, it's free still. And I'm like, what? So yeah, we shall see. But yeah, you never know. There's all new stuff coming out all the time. Every time you turn on, there's some new service.
But I do agree with you. I think services is the place to be, helping people get there. And I think Cliff did this at one point. He kind of had a studio in a box that he sold, right? Which was kind of like, here's all the components I have that. And I think there's still a place for that. And even selling it as a service to help people set those kinds of things up. Way more convenient to do it from your house than to go into a studio.
Yeah. He sold a $1,200 package that was, in my opinion, in many cases, so overkill for most people. But on the other hand, it would do what it was I think it had a 6-channel mixer, a bunch of PR40s and a Zoom H5. And, I was like, okay, but if you're flying solo, you don't need, this giant mixer.
Yeah. Yeah. A lot of people don't though. And so I think you could probably put a package together for the average podcaster for $500, right? Of all the right equipment to get it done. And it's going to be just fine. That could be having that kind of thing. And then the important thing on that is not just selling it to them, but some service after the sale. So having some phone support where they can, you can walk them through, okay, plug this into that and this into that and get this set up. That's way more valuable than the equipment purchasing, because most people, Dave, you just got a new router this week. You've been struggling with your internet connection. Last week we talked through it. You bought a new router and switch this week. Well, you thought it was going to be a 15-minute setup, and it lasted all day. If you had called me, I'm not saying you should have, but if you would have called me, I probably could have walked you through it in a third of the time or a quarter of the time, right? So that sales after the service, I think, is the more important part than just the equipment.
Yeah, here's a quick non-podcasting tip. If you are going to be changing your Wi-Fi, so something you might want to do is use the exact same name and exact same password. Otherwise, every single, including your Wi-Fi scale, needs to be reset. So that was I was like, oh yeah, what was I thinking? But I thought for some reason, I didn't test any of this. I thought on the app, I could just update the app and then anything that was connected to that hub for some of everything was like, and what I ended up doing in many cases was removing them, just delete and re-add, which once I got the hang of that, it was a piece of cake. But
and not a bad way to getting kind of an inventory of everything that's connected to your Wi-Fi, because you connect a ton of stuff and then you're like, eventually you're like, what is all connected to the Wi-Fi here in the house? And you kind of forget. Yeah. So that's the SSID. That is the name of your your wireless router. You can name that NSA security van or some of those kinds of things, to freak your neighbors out, which is pretty cool. but yeah, same one, same password is a good tip. And then everything should just connect back up again.
Sure. Yeah. So it was one of those where it's like, as soon as I realized what I did, I was like, oh, and then I was actually tempted to go back and switch the other one. And I'm like, this won't take that long. And yes, it will take that long. So it was fun. But
But here's the deal: like your video has, and we haven't had any problems, which is super great.
the Google router is pretty cool. I only have one little pod because my apartment isn't that big. They sell them in packs of 3, and I'm like, let's start off with a pack of 1.
Yeah, no, that was smart. Yeah, just the one.
What's really cool about it is I can go into their app. It's super easy to configure in their app. And if I had kids, I could easily go, you walk in, you're like, hey, put the iPad to bed. You go to bed. I could easily just go in and go, nope, no Wi-Fi for you. And if I was doing this, like if I was having problems right now, I could go into the app and say, take all the Wi-Fi I have and only give it to this stream right now. It's some pretty cool stuff. And if I, for the geek statistician of all the podcasters that love stats, you can go in and see how much bandwidth you've used and all sorts of stuff. But I just love the fact I haven't used it yet. But I guess there's an easy way I could go in and make a guest Wi-Fi thing. So it was actually pretty sweet. So thank you for that recommendation. So
yeah, no, good to have you on kind of modern Wi-Fi. And let me remind folks, just let me get really nerdy here for a second. Get your nerd on. We need a nerd jingle of some kind.
We'll just use the smooth jazz theme.
If you've bought a wireless router that was less than $50, chances are it's not going to last you very long and it's not very good. So if you're going to spend any money on wireless equipment, buy something that's a little over the $50 price range. You'll get better service. They also wear out a lot faster, and yes, they can wear out. The components in them go bad after a while. So spend a little money on your wireless router. This is your nerd tech tip of the morning.
Thank you. Okay. Anyway, Dave,
don't do your stuff on Wi-Fi. Like, don't do this on Wi-Fi. Have a wired connection. Right? Don't overwhelm your Wi-Fi. Most Wi-Fi is not set up for video burst. It's just doesn't do it very well. So get wired if you can.
All right, let's see if Jim has the same reaction to this that I do. This is from a Facebook group it just said podcast community. I think that's what anyway, here it is. Hey there, friends. So I am co-producing / hosting a podcast with my best friend, and we divided up the roles. Basically, she does the episode / website editing / updating, and I handle media marketing. Now, I have a lot of experience in that field, as marketing and media is what I do for a living, but I'm having trouble fitting in the day-to-dayness of social media. I see other podcasts posting, following, sharing, etc. every day. But doing that on top of the work I already do is tough to manage. I currently have 2 weekday jobs plus a weekend job. I know, I'm crazy. And I'm just trying to do enough on social media to feel like I'm getting somewhere with promoting or podcasts. How have all of you found balance how have all of you found a balance? Or do you have any suggestions for me on how to manage this? P.S. I'm sorry if you see this same post in many groups, which she did. She posted in every group. And also, if you're in the Cincinnati, Dayton area, I would love to meet up with you. And this is from Margie McKenzie. So what is your reaction when you hear that?
As far as the scheduling piece of it goes?
Just anything. There was one thing that jumped out at me that I was like,
it jumped out. Go ahead. Let's start with you, Dave.
Mine is I currently have 2 weekday jobs plus a weekend job. And that's when I'm like, maybe now is not the best time to be starting a podcast. It's like not a no, but it's like, I was like, wait, 2 jobs plus working on the weekends because everybody's working for the weekend. I was just like, that so popped into my head.
Such a great song too.
And I just was like, it's like I remember somebody emailed in once where they worked like 2 jobs and went to college. And I was like, maybe now is not the best time to start a podcast. There is such a thing as too busy. So,
or just lighten up on your expectations. Like, okay, so you see other people on Facebook doing this stuff daily. You can't. Like, you just can't do it. Yeah. There's some tricks you could do. You could schedule some things. You could do them in batches. You could, but I find the most interesting people are the real ones, not the ones who are faking it. Like, you can kind of tell those social accounts that are fakery, right? And you're like, that's not even really an interesting person. And I follow people who post a little and post a lot. Dave, you don't necessarily post a lot on Twitter, but I still like when you do, I go read it. It's important. I don't think you have to be out there every single day doing. In fact, I think sometimes it can be a little detriment, especially on Facebook. Like, there's so much Facebook noise going on. Be real. Don't be often. So my suggestion would just be authentic. and do what you can and don't worry about it. Just do it. Do it the
Yeah.
time you have.
Yeah, Jim, you hit a great point that I didn't even think about. And it's such a great point. What is she doing? She's comparing herself to others. That's the worst thing you can do, period. And not just in podcasting, in all things. If you start there's a oh man, what show was I listening to? And they were talking about the potential bad side effects. We're going to go in a really weird direction here
I like it.
of social media, because they said there are a lot of athletes that commit suicide and they said why. So think about it. If you're a famous athlete and you're on Twitter, you're taking a lot of crap. There are people that will just say you're a piece of garbage. They have no problem telling you you're a piece of garbage. And if you've, the problem is I was, famous running back person, and I was rookie of the year and blah, 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 hurt my knee, was never quite the same and got cut. And now I've been playing football since I was 7. I don't know what to do. And the world is telling me I'm a piece of crap. And I went, that's a really interesting thing. So when we just start comparing ourselves to others, and then Facebook, everything on Facebook is, wow, all my friends' kids are awesome and great, and their job is great, and their wife is, and their spouse is great. And I'm like, yeah, that's not real. That's Facebook. And that's another one where I think sometimes we just think that I'm the only person in the world that has anything. What do I need here is brothers and sisters. Where's my music? It doesn't work. Oh, I have it here. I had my Reverend music. No. Oh, well, that's great show prep, Dave. But anyway, yes, remove that clip. It doesn't work, but that's something that can,
it totally can. And I would rather follow people who are authentic, even if they only posted once a week. In fact, there's maybe more value in that. I'm watching these guys build these boats, these big yachts, and why I don't know, but I've gotten kind of vested, and they post once a week, and sometimes they skip a week, and they never come back and apologize. And it's every week. They could have a daily. They could have a daily thing where they crank out, here's what we did today. And, it's a 5-minute. Well, that'd be okay, but I'm okay with the once a week too, because what they do once a week is really, really good. So I think maybe focus on the quality over the quantity on that. Take a little pressure off yourself. Just have fun with it, for God's sakes. Like, it's not a job, just have fun with it.
Anytime I see Ray Ortega put out an episode of, what was his thing? Not Podcasters Roundtable, the other one. Podcaster Studio. Yeah. Which he doesn't do very often at all. But when he does, I'm like, oh, this must be good, because Ray's, decided this is studio worthy or whatever.
Yeah.
And same thing. He's doing his Patreon. He's done some random conversations with people and put that out on his Patreon channel. And he did probably a 2-hour conversation with Ian Bandrew. Just going nutso on gear that and again, that doesn't have a lot of activity on it, but when it does, it's like, okay, who's he talking to now? And he usually goes so deep in the woods that you're like, oh, this is either going to be really good or okay, I don't care that much about that, but it's a lot of fun. But I'm with you. Be real and
just be real.
Is
Ray coming to Podcast Movement?
That's a good question. I don't know.
It'd be good to see him. I really enjoy spending time with him. He is such a quality individual and like you said, and not just on the hardware, which he's really, really good at. I mean, if you ever need any hardware recommendations, Ray is the guy to kind of follow on that one. But he's just such a decent human being, and it's just he's him and Daniel are great to spend time around. So privileged to know him.
I'm not sure if Daniel's coming or not, so that'll be interesting to see. But we'll be there, so that'll be fun.
Yeah, no, it'll be super fun. I'm kind of looking forward to it. My summer, it's gonna be here before we know it. Like, I mean, we're what, a month? I think we're a month away. Holy crap.
I've got 2 weeks till I'm in DC. I think is my next one at FinCon. I'd have to look on the schedule, but I know that's coming up. I have a bunch of things coming up.
Daniel says yes, by the way. So
cool, nice,
awesome.
Good. Before this scrolls off the screen, in Brazil, people do not use Twitter that much. How do you think this platform can be used to reinforce podcast branding? Well, if nobody's on it, the question is, what is the question is then what are they using in Brazil? And again, my thing is, if you can, if there's a way to get physically in front of your audience, that's the best way. But other than that, it's a matter of, are they on Snapchat or WhatsApp?
Listen, the goal is not the platform. The goal is to connect with people, right?
Yes.
That's the goal. So regardless of what you're doing, it doesn't matter. You got to connect it. You have to connect to people. And just spray and pray doesn't really do anything. You're kind of wasting your time if you're just blasting onto Twitter or WhatsApp or Instagram or whatever the latest flavor of the month is. I think the real key is to be a real person and connect with other people. The best that do this when you watch this are connecting with their audience via those platforms. I just see too many podcasters just spraying stuff out there.
Yeah.
Just spray it, and hope it makes a connection. Social is not my best area. Like I'm not that good at. Now I'm good at of groups of private groups where we're working together, but the whole public space. That's certainly not. I don't like to connect that way, so I do it a little bit different.
Yeah, you can always tell when Dave has remembered to log into Buffer, because like the next 4 or 5 things will be just all about, hey, in this episode we talk about, hey, and it's like, oh, then you'll see like the next 3 will be like, it's hot on a Friday or something, just completely not podcasting related.
I think you got to be, I don't know. You have to be interesting. And I just don't know if I'm that interesting on those platforms. Like I do plenty of talking other places. I kind of think like, don't you hear for the people who listen to me? Don't you hear me enough? Do I really need to be on Twitter and Facebook? And like, just if you have a question, just contact me. I don't have to do it over those social networks. So I think it's a lot more interesting when you're interesting.
Glenn, what do you think?
Don't be boring.
There you go.
Exactly.
So who's not boring?
Our awesome subscribers.
Our awesome subscribers. Yeah. If you want to be an awesome subscriber, go over to askthepodcastcoach.com/awesome. We're talking about awesome people that in this case have given $20 a month. Thank you so much for that. Like Greg over at debtshepherd.com, where he teaches financial wellness. That was him.
Don't be boring.
That is Glenn the Geek from horseradionetwork.com, who is never boring. I'm looking forward to seeing him at Podcast Movement. I'm assuming he's going. Josh Rivers at podcastingexperiments.com. Max Trescott up in the air at aviationnewstalk.com. Shane at spybrary.com. Shane is doing, I saw on Facebook, some sort of tour of pizza in New York today. And I was like, that, I think I would gain 5 million pounds doing that, but it looked like a lot of fun. Carrie Bond at the keywestperspective.com/podcast. That's a podcast about island life and the people who live it. My buddy Ronsley down in Australia at Amplify Media Group. Find him at mustamplify.com. Carl White, I wish I was there, loving Life in the Carolinas podcast.com, because it's probably not 88 degrees in the Carolinas. I don't know, maybe not. But if all else fails, I could always just drive to the ocean and jump in. And Kim Craggy, if you're into Toastmasters, check out Toastmasters101.net. And if you'd like to be an awesome supporter, simply go over to askthepodcastcoach.com/awesome. So, and
before we move on, can I jump in with something real quick?
Yeah.
So Mike Howard, who's a friend of the show, he listens on Saturdays. He's in the chat room. He may be out there right now. But he usually he's doing work while we are podcasting generally. Just diagnosed with stage 4 cancer. And
oh my goodness.
I just want to mention Mike's like I said again, a good friend of the show. Yeah. JPEG has a podcast, JPEG to Raw. Put out a really nice post this week to his audience. And I think I bring this up just to say, how do you, as a podcaster, how do you handle major interruptions in your life? Like, and he's not going to try to podcast through this kind of thing. He's like, I have a photography podcast. I'm not turning it into a cancer podcast. Or I'm going to take a break. And so just this morning, he posted to the group's Facebook page. So it's public. This isn't for secret information. But he did say, hey, this is happening to me and I'm taking a break and the group's going to be taken care of. And we have a mod in here, but I'm going to be gone for a while and, not going to be able to post as much. And I think if there is a way to handle those kinds of major interruptions one, Mike, we're thinking about you, a friend. So super, super tough. He's part of this community. He's been a part of the Ask the Podcast Coach community since day one. He's listened for a long time and I appreciate that. But if you want to know, or if you think, how do you handle major interruptions in your podcast? Mike has kind of done a clinic on this. It could be, and he could have just disappeared. Like he could have. Some
Right.
people do this, right? They're just gone. they don't tell their audience anything. They
What
just
happened?
stop, right? And then some people maybe go a little too far the other direction, where then, like I said, he turns his photography podcast into a cancer podcast. Well, that audience maybe is not up for a cancer podcast, right? And I'm not saying he shouldn't do that, but he's just come on and told his audience in a very matter of fact way, guys, I'm going to be taking a break. I'm going to record an episode to talk a little bit about it. And then I'm battling this thing. And I just think, Dave, like a death of a co-host or the death of somebody in your family or whatever. I think those are some contingencies as podcasters we kind of need to think about a little bit and just say, do I have a backup plan? Do I have an exit strategy? Have I kind of thought through a little bit of what I would do if? And again, nobody will punch you in the face if you just disappear either. But I think Michael's handled it very well. So, Mike, one, we're thinking about you. Two, I think you've just done a great job of kind of keeping your audience in the loop and letting them know what's going on.
Yeah, and no audience, anybody that loves your show, like I've had some people like, oh, I don't want to let them down. I'm like, it's, you're whatever, you're moving, you're going through a divorce, you have cancer, whatever it is. Nobody that likes you is going to go, what do you mean your mom died? It's like,
no, they'll understand. People are so understanding. Not always, but
Yeah.
most people are so understanding for sure.
Yeah. Hey, our buddy Dolwit dad in the chat room said the magic word. We should have
I think he's trying to rally you up.
Okay.
Let me just warn you, Dave. I think he's trying to rally you up.
Okay. I have a quick response. It's easy. He asked the question, of course, what are your thoughts on Anchor? So I would just say, if you're happy with giving up access to your stats in Podcast Connect, if you're happy with giving up access to your stats in Stitcher and having very basic numbers, a company that hasn't made any profit, a company changing the format of your file, a company that stops you from receiving email and is not always forthcoming with the information, then by all means use anchor.fm and have fun creating your podcast. I just want you to go in with open eyes. So there you go.
That needs to be like a label warning, like you see on cigarettes.
Yes.
You need to, on podcasts, you need to have a warning. This could lead to, or if you're going to ask Dave the question about Anchor, you're going to get that every time. I'm just going to say it.
Yeah. If you want to jump in on the conversation, we still have the link set up, askthepodcastcoach.com/join. And I did see this, and this is something, again, it's kind of maybe a newbie question, but if you're new to this, you might not realize that. This was from Sean out in a Facebook group. He says, our host network has switched to Simplecast, and I've noticed that our numbers are, this is not the one I thought it was, but this is still a numbers thing. And I've noticed that our numbers are vastly different from what they were before. Does anyone else use Simplecast? If so, do you experience the same thing? And I don't know that Simplecast is officially certified yet in IAB. So that's the thing that's the industry standard. So if you're coming from, and Daniel just did a great thing on this. If you go out to the audacitytopodcast.com, he's got a thing about speeds of such, and as well as how people count stats. But so that could be one. The one I thought this was about is Jim. So that's the number one. I always tell people, if you go to McDonald's and then you go to Burger King, you're going to go, hey, this is way different. Well, it's still a hamburger, but it's also a different recipe. And some people have way different recipes. So that may be the case there. So, don't freak out too bad. But the other one, I thought the question that I had picked was, again, if you're new to this, what if your numbers go down? Like, is it seasonal? Do you see any kind of seasonal differences in your show, Jim?
Well, we see seasonal differences on the Gallup podcast, but we do see them. It's we see a little dip in the summer and spring and fall. Now our audiences are kind of these strengths coaches and strengths enthusiasts, and those kind of follow the business trends of people. They get really busy in the spring, and those are. I shouldn't use seasons because it's different in different hemispheres. So when we think about March, April, May, a little bit of spike. Everybody's kind of paying attention. We get into summer, it kind of dips down a little bit. We get back into September, October, November, kind of picks back up again. December and January down a little bit. So yeah, we do see some seasonal spikes. I kind of count on them at this point, and kind of be like, oh, okay, it's going to happen. I don't think it's a big deal, but yeah, we do see some.
Yeah, I think if I was doing a wedding podcast, I would probably get a lot of information like around, either the beginning of the year because everybody's getting ready for June, or if I was doing a football podcast, I'd probably get a lot of information or more listeners around. I don't know, August, September, whenever football season kicks
Dave,
into gear.
the question is, does it matter? Like, do you change your habits because of that?
Mm.
I don't know if you do. I mean, you can. If like I would think for weddings, I think most people are planning weddings a year in advance. So is there a wedding season anymore if they're planning a year out? I don't know.
That's a good point.
Football in the NFL, yeah, sure. Okay, there's August through January, right? When the season's going. But there's so much NFL offseason news. Is there really an offseason? So
good question.
I don't know.
Just looking at the police blotter sometimes will keep you up to date. On it's like who got a DUI this week? All right, way to go.
Well, I sometimes I think we overthink that. I think just again continue to create some great content. People love to talk about that, and I think NFL wise, people like to talk more about the NFL in the off season than they do during the season sometimes because it's all speculation, and people love speculation. I mean, it's so they just love to get in and talk about those kinds of things and think about what things could be. So, if you're taking some time off because the season is off or whatever, you might be missing some folks who like talking about that stuff.
And Dave has learned a valuable lesson that if you mute somebody in Google Hangouts,
they're
have
permanently muted.
They have to unmute themselves.
Oh,
so,
okay.
Michael, if you go up to the top of the screen, because when I click on it,
right there.
There you go. There you go.
Yeah, I was trying to get my headphone things working through this microphone, but it's on my little Bluetooth speaker.
No, you sound good now. Yeah.
Yeah, my voice ain't doing very good either.
That's okay.
But,
It must be an Omaha thing.
It must be, I think, all the weeds and all that stuff, and I don't know. So I was talking to a person, and she was talking. I was talking to her, and she goes, "Well, how much is this thing going to cost a month?" And I told her, I said, "If you really, eventually, it might cost you like StreamYard and all these things, maybe, $65, $75 a month to really do it right, for okay." My dog does that. No, I'm just kidding. But so probably $100, probably what it cost her.
So Michael, what you're saying though, so you're talking to somebody about starting a podcast or doing a podcast, and their concern is, what's my financial commitment to this? Right. That's and so you're kind of thinking through what's the right answer of, what dollar amount do I tell them? So Dave, when you do this all the time, when you're talking money, what do you say to people when they say, how much is this going to cost?
I usually say to start up, it's going to be about the price of an Xbox. And they'll go, how much is that? And I go, $300. And I said, but you will hear this a lot. It depends. So let's start off first. Is it just you, or is it you and a co-host? And they'll go, it's just me. And I'm like, all right, you're looking at $60 to start your podcast. And they're like, okay, but how much more? And I go, okay, do you have a graphic artist? No, I could do that. Okay, $0 for that then. Do you have a website? Yep, already got one. Okay, $0 for that. So there's a lot of depends to this, but like the StreamYard thing, that's if you're doing live video. There's no rule anywhere that says you have to do live. I mean, I don't do any live video for the School of Podcasting, and it seems to be doing okay. It cost me $7 a month to do Building a Better Dave. Now, granted, I don't rarely record any episodes on that, but on the other hand, it's costing me $7 a month. So you could start off for $7 a month and do a couple episodes a month that are short and sweet, into your ATR 2100 that cost you $60, into a Libsyn account that maybe cost you, $7, or if you want to go crazy, $20. I usually tell people $30 a month because I figure $20 for a Libsyn account and $10 for your website.
Yeah, that's what I kind of thought too. I thought maybe if she was going to go more like a shoutcast or whatever, if they're going to record, have that thing like that to where it's cleaner, maybe, but I was going to tell her right around 60 and then keep her.
Michael, I tell people, like, don't think about those. It's too early. If they're just starting a podcast, it's too early to be thinking about those. Get out and create some content that you don't have to pay anything for. And I'm not talking about going on a free podcast host. I'm talking about jumping on a conference call, recording it, and seeing if it's any good. Because the first couple ones you do are generally awful, right? They're just terrible.
Like a Zoom thing or whatever.
Yeah. jump on, record the thing, and then if you can watch it like 2 hours or 2 days later and you smile while you're watching it, okay. And if you want to do it again after watching it, then okay, you might be onto something here. But I think so many people get so caught up in the creation bit of it, all the mechanics of creation. Then they get started, they do it a couple times, and they're like, oh, this isn't what I thought it was going to be. Because there's not thousands of people, or they're not getting the feedback that they thought, or they don't have any listeners, right? And there's no dopamine because they're not getting any feedback on it. They're not getting any kudos on it, right? And they're not very good, just to be honest, right? You need to practice this thing. So before we even talk cost, I would say, have you recorded a couple calls? Like, just record them. See if your content is even interesting to you. And if you like doing it, then start thinking about jumping in and doing a podcast at that point of get an RSS feed, a host provider, all those things that you need. So I think we go way too early on the podcast conversation. Yeah, for sure.
Well, I'm the kind of person that likes to plan ahead, so I see what's coming.
No, I gotcha. But Michael, this is planning ahead by having them practice these things.
Gotcha. Yeah,
you know what I'm saying? Like, hey, let's not get the cart before the horse here. You're talking about the cart. Do we even have a horse?
Yeah. Right. I always say, write down, you don't have to script these out, but just give me the first 10 topics of your episodes. And they go, what do you mean? I'm like, write down, like if it was me, it'd be like, okay, microphones, mixers, promotions, web hosting, like things you're going to talk about. So, well, what if it's a diary thing? Okay, well, what are the top 10 stories from your life that you're going to share on your podcast? And that will eliminate the men from the boys in some cases.
Mm-hmm. I heard you say that on one of your podcasts, I think.
Yeah. It's a good, every time somebody comes to me and says, hey, I'm thinking about starting a podcast, I'm like, okay, what's the first 10 things you're going to talk about? Oh, give me 10 titles. And it makes them kind of think. I just had a call this week. One of our office in Japan wants to start one. And so I kind of walked through and I said, hey, the hardest thing isn't starting, it's maintaining. Like anybody can create one thing and then you get kind of done. You're like, oh crap, that's a lot of work. Like, yikes, do I want to do that again? And so I think you got to kind of ease them into it a little bit, and they'll be fine. We'll make a couple for them and see how it goes. But I'd get them planning content, not hardware, not services, but content.
Right.
Yeah. And then
go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say, because then there are things like you can start off with Skype instead of jumping to Squadcast or Clean Feed.
Yeah.
There are all sorts of ways to kind of amp your way up. I mean, when I started as a musician, I did not start off with a $900 guitar. I ended up with one, but I started off with one that cost about $30 and it was a piece of crap and was hard to play. Why? Because if I could play that thing, I definitely had the passion to get through to the other stuff. So anyway,
you didn't have that song High LPR 40 in your background.
No, I did. That one.
There you go. That's what I'm looking for.
Yeah.
So what I like about you guys' show is Dave is kind of the wild one and Jim's like the lawyer. Jim will go
said by no one ever about me, Michael.
Hold on. Jim will go now Dave. Think about but I'm kind of like this. I'm kind of like Dave. I'm all I'm kind of giddy and all that stuff, having fun and all that. But one thing I wanted to ask, when you send Jim his $1 million checks every month for the co-hosting, how do you? So this lady was asking me. She goes, "Well, how do you have a coat? Who owns what and who owns this and that?" I said, "Well, that's what I wanted to talk to you about today for sure."
This is huge. I usually ask Jim about once a year if we're still cool, but you need to agree on. We just had that question. Like, I do this, she does the editing, she does that. You need to figure out who's doing what. Number one, so you can expectations. You should probably set up in writing how to approach each other when you're not happy, because the problem is so many people are like, my co-host does this and they don't do that and they don't do this. And I've asked all my friends and they say I should do this. I'm like, wait a minute, you're talking to your friends about a problem you're having with your co-host. Talk to the co-host about the problem you're having with your co-host and you have a much better solution. It's awkward and it's weird. You got to put on your big boy or big girl pants, but you're not going to get anywhere talking to your friends about the problem you have with your co-host. You might get some feedback on how to approach it, but make sure everybody knows what's, and then the thing is, and there's no real way to avoid this, but at Libsyn, we do have on occasion where, because whoever's credit card is on the account is who owns it. Even if I'm using, so if it's my credit card, but we're using Jim's login, it's my account. And what will happen is Jim will log in and change the password. So now I can't get in, but I'm still getting charged. And I email Libsyn support and go, hey, I've been locked out of my account. And they're like, okay, well, just reset the password. And they're like, well, I can't. I don't have access to that. And it gets very, people are just, and there are times I asked my boss, I go, what happens when people get really stupid? He goes, well, if people start deleting stuff, he goes, we will lock everybody out of their account. In extreme cases, we will lock both people out of the account and go get your lawyers and let me know when you're done fighting who owns this account, because you're being stupid. So
yeah, I told her, well, she was, this other person, she was with a podcasting people. Then all of a sudden it just like, it didn't happen anymore. And so,
that can happen.
She wasn't mad or anything. It just, she just wants something else to do. And I said, well, I know you people, and I know I have some stuff here, and I can maybe help her out, because I'm no expert by any means, but yeah. So I told her probably.
Let me say one thing on this. Let me recommend, I think, if you're starting a new podcast with a new partner, this is going to sound weird, but keep timesheets. So for every hour that you work on this, maybe break it down into 50-minute increments. Submit timesheets to each other about what you're doing and what was done and how long it was done, and keep track of some of that time. One, so you ensure that the work is fairly distributed if that's what you're trying to do. But two, I think it creates a aura of consistency and accountability. Thank you. Yeah. That really allows transparency in, here's what we're doing, right? Here is what we're doing. I know how much time Dave spends producing this show. Like, I know, because I've done it and I do it, and I know. And because of that, it would be super unfair to me to say, Dave, I want a part of what we do here. Like, and this is my part. Like what I'm doing right now, this is my part. This is what I do. To say, Dave, I think you should pay me, or we should split something, would be pretty ridiculous, because I don't do anything, because I know what he has to do to get this done. I think new podcasters don't know that. And when they start splitting things like, hey, you do social and you do the post and you do the writing and I'm going to do the marketing, they have no idea what that means. And they don't have any idea how much time they're spending. And so just to make that transparent, keep timesheets. And every week, submit them like you would at your job, and go over them as a partnership. I don't think if you can do that, you're going to have if you can't do that, you won't have longevity in your podcast.
Right. Yeah. Well, and I also, I think of it as the IKEA principle. So if you buy IKEA furniture that somebody else put together, it's worth $150. But if you actually had to do all the labor and put it all together, to you, it's worth $500 because you know what went into it. You know?
I know.
When I was in a band, they always thought I was weird because I actually kept a book for all the money stuff. And at the beginning of every practice, I'd say, hey, we have $110 in the band fund. Anybody have any questions on that? The last thing we bought was, Ryan needed bass strings. So we bought bass strings. So we're down to 110. Any questions? And like nothing would happen. And the next week we didn't even have a gig. All we've done is we practiced on Thursday. It's the next Thursday I'd walk in and I go, hey, the band fund is at 110. The last thing we bought was bass strings for Ryan. Anybody go? And they were like, why do you say that every week? I said, because if you noticed, we've never had an argument about money in this band because everybody knows exactly what it is. And we all approve anytime we spend any money on it. I said, and the one guy said, you know what? That's true. And he goes, we've argued about money, because all of a sudden you're like, what do you mean it's only $30? And you're like, oh, so yeah. So anything you can do to be transparent, the best.
Yeah.
It's communication.
Totally.
Communication is the lubrication of a fine running podcast. Yeah. So
wow. That's a
bumper sticker
there somewhere.
I know. Put it on Twitter. Hurry.
Yeah. Well, buy that domain. Remember, Jim used to always say that all the time.
Yep.
See if that domain's available.
See if that domain's available.
That's why I put podcrack.com. Is it available?
Nice.
For sure. Michael, what else? What else do you have? What other questions?
I think I told her, I said, she was talking about maybe batching some stuff way out there. And I said, well, I'd batch something, maybe 3 or 4 of them, maybe, and make it evergreen. Nothing that's, and make sure that each one of them all connect. And that way, don't go out more than 4. Because if you get all of a sudden, if you're doing a whole bunch of them and the subject changes, well, then you did all that work for nothing, So
hey, I need to address the chat room real quick because they're going a little bonkers here.
Yeah.
There wasn't a
Michael, we'll let you go, man. Thanks for jumping.
Yeah, no
in here.
problem. Have a good
Thanks,
day,
man.
fellas.
Appreciate it.
Thanks again. Bye.
Yeah, let's pipe down in the chat room, kids.
Yeah, I don't know if we need to do that out there.
Yeah, SP was just pointing out, and he's very correct on this.
I want to make sure I think they're joking, Dave.
Okay.
I do think they're joking. We're trying to watch this as we're podcasting, and I hope so. I hope they're joking. Let's just say.
I think they're joking. Yeah, because SP pointed out, SP fan of the show, says at the beginning of this, I said, if you're happy with giving up access to your stats in Podcast Connect, if you're happy with giving up access to your stats in Stitcher, and we're talking about Anchor, and they were pointing out that I'm saying that as an absolute, and that's not an absolute. That is there are ways that you can use Anchor.
Yeah.
I
have an Anchor account, and I don't. They didn't submit my stuff to Apple because I didn't let them. Right? You're right. In the early days, they there was a little trickery there of like, hey, do you want us to submit everything everywhere for you? They were trying to be helpful. Like for most podcasters, they don't know.
Right.
They were trying to be helpful. We'll submit it all for you. If you said yes, it's going to go to iTunes, right?
And everywhere else.
And everywhere else. And they'll own it, right? That's all that part is all true. Today, they've kind of toned that down. They've kind of backed it up. They'll still do it for you, by the way, if you ask them to.
They still ask on a regular basis, at least from what I've seen. I need to log into my Anchor account.
I have my account. I use it every day. Or not every day, every week. I'm subscribed to every service everywhere for Home Gadget Geeks, just so I can talk about it here on the show. That's the reason I do it. In Anchor, when I submit to Anchor, they have gotten much better about not asking me every single time. I have to kind of go find it now. If I wanted to submit that to everywhere, I could have them do that, but it's not quite the in your face up front. I don't want to call it trickery because they were just trying to be helpful. Let's just be honest. And so it's not quite that way anymore. But if you do submit your podcast through them on iTunes, you do lose a little bit of control of it. And that's the part that's true. So this is one of those questions, Dave. I think again, it depends. You're like Michael Ray says, I'm your lawyer a little bit. You'll say something, and I'll say, well, what Dave really meant to say was that. So I hope we're all good in the chat room. I think we've done almost 300 episodes of these and have never had. I don't know if we've ever had an issue with our listeners in the chat room. So I hope that's not the case. I don't think it was meant to be that way. We appreciate you guys.
Yeah, absolutely. So, man, look at the time, Jim.
Well, that's a good way to end it, I guess.
Are you off vacation yet?
Yeah. I came back this week. So we kind of came back together, talked a little bit, had a whole bunch of conversations about how good it is just to take some time off from tech, like a little renewed interest in it. So we just got that done. It's still sitting in the queue, but it'll be posted out at the Average Guy.
Yeah. Do you feel now like a little refreshed? Like were you kind of like, it wasn't quite so much the time to make the donuts kind of.
I was like, get off my lawn. I was kind of an old grumpy, like get off my lawn. And taking a couple weeks off from podcasting. I was still working, but from podcasting was really, really nice on my own show. And so I recommend it. I recommend get a couple weeks away, take some time off. It's good for you.
Right. In the post show today, we're going to be talking about common phrases. I think this should be fun in podcasting, as well as Steve Stewart's official answer on Zoom. So if you're
good,
stick around for that.
Yeah,
and here's the fun thing: I put out this mammoth interview based episode on the School of Podcasting last week. Thing was like almost 2 hours, I think. So if you want to check that out, schoolofpodcasting.com/interviews. The fun thing is I have no idea what I'm doing on Monday. I have a couple ideas that I'm working on, but at this point, I'm like, I officially don't know what's coming out Monday.
I challenge you to take a week off, Dave. Challenge you.
But so what I am going to do is look at what that did, because I got feedback. I really thought I'd have somebody go, dude, what are you doing to me? I'm not going to listen to a 2-hour podcast. And I got a text message from Jason Bryan that said, dude, that was like the best episode ever. So I was like, well, there you go.
I had that jingle you used stuck in my head all week. I'm just going to say it.
Nice.
Just going to say it.
All right. Well, stick around for some post show. peeing in your Cheerios. Yeah.
I think the correct phrase though is peeing in your Wheaties. I think.
Is it?
I think.
Is it really?
Well, I think. I mean, you
I
can
guess
say
it depends on what it could be Captain Crunch, depending on, I guess, your demographic.
I could be wrong. I mean, but I thought it was peeing in your Wheaties. Anyway,
I've always heard Cheerios.
the jingle. No, listen, the jingle's great. No, it was the little interlude music, not that jingle. It was the little interlude music that you had.
You know where I stole that from? The Newsworthy. The Newsworthy has, and it just helps her show. It helps everything kind of flow together, and just like it's a little way. So basically, what we're talking about is if you had, if I was using cool jazz music, I could just in between, we're going from topic A to topic B, just kind of go. Yeah. All right. Next up, we're going to be talking about, and it's just a thing to kind of go, hey, we're done with that topic.
Switching topics.
Yeah, and she does that, and I was like, it just seems to keep the thing moving. My worry was I did it so much that by the end of it, you're like, oh my God, if I hear this again, I'm going to punch somebody. So I was kind of worried about that, but
well, Daniel confirms he thinks it's he's heard Cheerios as well. Don't Google this, by the way, because you'll get peeing. The answers are peeing in your dog's food, peeing in your dream meaning, peeing in your pants is the coolest. That's a good one. Peeing in your sleep meaning. Peeing in your sleep causes. So that's if I was just trying to look it up, and that's what I got for the top 5 answers of peeing in your blank.
Yeah. Bangs has something. Have you heard about this? How Zoom apparently had a whatever we call it, a bug in it.
Yeah.
Zoom.us that would allow people to somehow use the camera on a Mac. So Bangs is letting us know Apple released a stealth Mac patch to remove the unsecured web server Zoom was installing this week. They normally do this for malware, so take that as a point of reference to Zoom. Yeah, the one of the things I did this morning was I woke up, even though I'm not on a Mac, and I went in and updated my Zoom software because I installed it on my laptop, and I'm like, man, this looks a lot different. And I'm like, that's because you have a very old version. So
yeah, Windows not affected, at least not that we know of. And it was creating a web server basically on the Mac when you would have, and if you uninstall the software, the server would stay. It would still be there, and so you could go to a website that had a link, a malformed link, and it would start this web server and take over your cam. And like, this isn't malicious. Like, it didn't delete things, it didn't crash your system, but it was invasive in the sense that your camera would be on. And so the interesting thing about this is the researcher, the security researcher who found this, let Zoom know 90 days ago. And they struggled to get it fixed. And I think that's the number of days that, there's a kind of an agreement out there. If you're a security researcher, you're going to give the organization a certain number of days.
Yeah.
But they didn't fix it, and they released it as a 0-day. So the researchers released it as a 0-day exploit, which means it's available and it works right now. And they even put a test case out on how to use it. To get, all of a sudden when that happened, and this is what you want to see happen, people start moving. So Apple said, we but if Zoom's not going to fix this, we better fix it. All right. And so they came out with that patch. So been pretty interesting, just on the Mac though, not necessarily affecting Windows users.
Yeah. And speaking of Zoom, I will put a link in the Patreon page, I guess, in this case. Steve Stewart, a friend of the show, been in podcasting forever. He's the head of the Podcast Editors Facebook group. Put a thing about why he hates, because I go, dude, you're kind of known, like, I'm known for hating Anchor. You're kind of known for hating Zoom. Like, why is that? And so on this page, he does kind of a side-by-side, and he explains that there's this thing called, you can tell people, apparently, I've never done this, I see it, where you can tell your guest to turn on the original sound, which to me right there, that I have to ask my guest to do something, depending on how hard that is. That could be interesting. But he says, even with this original thing turned on, it can be, what it does is it, depending on who your guest is, they might come in a little too hot. There might be some, clipping and things like that. So he's got a really cool page here, and he talks about how, where I thought somewhere on here he had, maybe I'm missing it. he had the different sample rates. That might have been on a Facebook. Oh, it's right here. Technically, the audio from Zoom is recorded at 32 kilohertz, where normally it's 44.1. That's right. I thought that was the key. It's not sampling as high.
Can we hear the audio difference between 32 and 41 or 44.1?
That's a great question.
I'm not Steve's smart guy, so I'm not debating. I'm just wondering if how much of a difference you hear.
Yeah, to me, it sounds just not as crisp. Not a ton. It's definitely listenable. I have a client of mine that does this. Here's the Zoom Raw, Zoom with original sound turned on for my guests. So I'll have to listen to this because I don't think you guys can't hear this because it's on the computer I'm doing. But I think it's acceptable. But he did say, like, to him, his idea of hell is somebody using Zoom and they're using their built-in microphone on their laptop. He goes, that's like the epitome of like, oh, make it stop, mommy.
That would be enough. That would be enough. Daniel, do you know what Hangouts samples at? Is that, or Dave, do you know what is it? I'm assuming it's 44.1.
Yeah.
But I don't know what the other component is that in there. I've had really good luck with Hangouts. We just did StreamYard. That seemed to work fine. I looked at Zoom as an option. We have the webinar software at Gallup, so I looked at that. I was trying to keep my Gallup stuff and my own stuff together. And I didn't want to do one for one place and one for the other. I was kind of trying to keep them together. So,
yeah, I know GoToWebinar used to have horrific audio. If you tried to download it later, it was always like, "What are you, sampling at?" And it was always like 16 or something, just like AM radio ish. That's almost like back in the days of Blog Talk Radio. Daniel says there's definitely a difference between 22 and 44. Yeah, that's an interesting one.
They're sampling at 32, not 22.
Yeah,
maybe
so
it was just a typo.
It's kind of in the middle there that they're trying to get. But because I asked him, I'm like, and he's like, it's not as good. Basically, is what he was saying. And I'm like, well, but I think it's listenable. But yeah, I have a client, I finally got her into getting closer to her microphone. She was using a Yeti that was probably 3 feet from her, and I'm like. Can you get that? I'm like, I understand you don't want it in the picture because she's doing video. I said, but if you could have it just out of the frame, that would help a ton. And it did. And then I just she sends me the Zoom video and I take it and rip out the audio and go to town from there. So, and it's listenable. It's not the best, but it's not the worst.
Dustin had asked if anyone heard if Google Meets is replacing Hangouts and what the differences are. I think Hangouts have now moved into the G Suite. So if you're paying for Google and you're paying for their services, those Hangouts, from what I understand, will still be available. So you can still do the video conferencing and all those things through the paid version of it. It's just not as convenient for podcasters to do. And I'm not sure those go automatically to YouTube or not. I don't think they do. I'd have to do a little bit of research looking on that. If you go to youtube.com/webcam, you'll kind of see the future of where they're headed. But today there's no way to get two people together on that functionality. It's just all it does is broadcast what you have, right? And so I don't think we really know. Hangouts are going away for sure now, August 1st. And you better have something. If you've been doing it this way, you better have a backup. Dave, we only have 3 weeks of this left.
I'm sitting there thinking, like, what would I have done today if I hadn't had Google Hangouts? And I'm like, I guess I would have gone. See, I can start OBS on Twitch, but I don't know how to bring you in. That's what I need to learn. That would be my backup plan.
OBS as a backup is a little painful, because that's such a steep learning curve on that software.
Yeah, it's.
I started messing with it, and I'm like, I don't have enough brain power at the moment to figure this out.
There's kind of two versions, and I was kind of using OBS Lite that some other company had come up with. It was supposed to be specifically made for Twitch, and even that, there were things that I'm just like, I do the preview, and there was something that was supposed to be on the bottom of the screen, and they wouldn't tell you what size to make it, but whatever size I made it, just horked it. It was just this blur of a graphic, and I'm like, that's not right. And there was just not a lot of support. And so
people are maybe shouting at us like, what about Zoom? Like we were just talking about, why couldn't we just, you need to have the webinar software to be able to broadcast and stream into YouTube to get this done. So, and that's expensive. So the
Zoom webinar is not cheap. I used it for a month and I kind of went, I love it. I use it all the time for School of Podcasting stuff, but it's not a broadcast. I'd have to set up whatever the Zoom link is for the join link, and everybody would have to join, and that could be an absolute nightmare.
You can. So on the webinar now, there's a link down below that says, other. And if you click on that, it'll say connect this to YouTube, and you can connect it. And then it does the exact same thing. It would be us, and it would be streaming it out, broadcasting it out through the YouTube interface. So you don't have to invite everybody. They don't have to be in the Zoom call. You can broadcast it, but you have to have that Zoom webinar software. And I don't know, what are you paying? What do you pay for that?
I don't use the webinar. I use their Pro, which is, I want to say something ridiculous, like $15 a month. It's really cheap.
Yeah, well, so that's great for video. That's great for just regular you and I connecting, but you have to have the webinar. I'll have to go out and maybe look that up. You have to have that webinar software to be able to make that Zoom broadcast functionality work. Yeah, it does. Dustin says it sounds like there's a void. Yeah, there is a little bit of a void, and there's not nobody. I mean, there are some services that are doing this. I think now they have an official date. I think you're going to see a bunch of them pop up. By the way, I think you're going to see a bunch really quick. Here.
Absolutely.
Go, hey, do this. We can take care of your Hangouts problem. There's going to be some podcasters going to be. Dave, think about these podcasters that don't pay attention. They just podcast. They're not listening to the industry news.
Surprise.
Today they just found out August 1st. Holy crap. So, no surprise, or I'm not shocked that StreamYard has been really aggressive with me and sending emails like, how's it going? How can we help you?
Yeah.
How's it going?
Well, I'll be interested to see when I go back to their Facebook, I'll see if they've answered my chat. So,
yeah. And go ahead.
Well, I was going to say, Daniel needs an opinion here. He says, I'm moving my studio, and I'm debating whether I should put back everything as it was before with a mixer and a Zoom H4 and USB interfaces, or only use the MixPre 6 or the Rodecaster Pro. I have moved, except on Saturdays, although last Saturday I've gone back to the MixPre 6. And here's the reason why. And I forgot about this until I used it last night. When I record directly into the computer with a Rodecaster, I cannot beat this dog hard enough to get a decent level in my recording. Now, it's not the end of the world. I just go into Hindenburg and go, hey, can we boost this up? But it's this other step that I go, I don't have to do this with the other box. In fact, with the other box, at times I'm a little too hot, and I just like, okay. And it takes up less room. And
preamps in the Procaster are not, because that's what really is driving it, right?
I think it's a USB thing, because I've gone in and said, like, I can make this sound really horrible and turn the gain all the way up and turn the, it's just USB out. There's like some sort of weird squelching thing almost that it just like, I'm only going to get this out of it. And I'm like, ugh. So I'm like, all right, well, I'll use this on Saturdays so I can, I need my strike button. So
I'd tell Daniel, like, here's your chance as you're moving your studio. Here's a chance to try some new things that you haven't done before. And he's not podcasting a ton right now. So it's not like if it was you moving, Dave, and you needed to be up and running by Saturday and having things all figured out, right, as well as for your other podcasts. So Daniel, I would say experiment with some things. If you're moving in the new studio, use it as an opportunity. There's no better time, like when you're moving, to throw things away, or try, and not literally throw things, but throw processes away, or try new things. You get an opportunity to kind of to forgive the sins of the past and try some things differently. So I'd say I'd say experiment a little bit and try some different stuff. Yeah.
Miss Eileen says she's on a Mac for YouTube here. She says, I can use Ecamm Live, which does look like a really cool software, as the virtual cam on YouTube webcam, and then guests can come on via Skype.
I react to Skype like Steve Stewart reacts to Zoom. Like, I just cannot. I've been working with Skype for 15 years now, and it's such a piece of crap, piece of software. I mean, it's so awful. It is literally, it has code from like 15 years ago still running in it. I lose my mind whenever we think, and again, they've done Microsoft has done a ton of things to fix it, and it's better today, and I get all that. But I have that, Dave, visceral reaction to when people say Skype. I just go, isn't there anything else we can use instead of it? So that if it's working for you, keep using it.
Jim, you might be able to help on this. Kim has been just battling installing a free SSL. Now, the only thing I can think of is she's doing this on a subdomain, because I've done this on numerous. I've used whatever it is, easy something, blah, blah, blah. And I just go in and go install this, blah, 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 click, done, test, done, boom, out. And the only thing I can think of is she's adding it to a subdomain and just hitting. Do you have any insights on?
No, I don't. That's not my specialty. I have a guy that at Maple Grove Partners that does all that stuff for me and make sure it's taken care of. But
yeah, and her host is GoDaddy. When she asked them about that, they ask her to pay. And it's like,
yeah. No, I don't. I don't have any insight on SSL. I try not to. That's again, I let my guy over at Maple Grove take care of that for me, and it's just a lot better that way. Me not thinking about it. Sorry, Kim.
Yeah, unfortunately, Daniel says, the best place to talk would be your web host. And Daniel says, oh, yeah, GoDaddy, leave them. So
it's so funny. GoDaddy's another company that's you either love them or you hate them, right? Yeah. It just depends what you want. I think if you can do a lot of things yourself, GoDaddy is a great way to go because it's the lowest possible cost in a lot of cases. But like in this situation, when you need help, they're going to make you pay for it. It's kind of like, paying for your snacks on the airlines. How much did you pay for the seat?
Yeah.
Exactly. Are you buying the soda for $3 on the airplane? Or are they giving it to you? So,
yeah, the Bangs is talking about the equivalent input noise on the MixPre versus the Rodecaster, and apparently they're not a whole lot different. It's like 125 versus I have to scroll up to see that. Yeah, the Rodecaster is minus 125. The MixPre is minus 129. So I don't know if that's a huge difference, but and yeah, I'm with Kim. She says normally GoDaddy is really good, but they're starting to nickel and dime me, and that's why I didn't like them in the past.
Yeah.
And so
when you with those low cost providers like that, any of those hosting providers, DreamHost, Bluehost, all that, they're all super low. There's no margins in what they do. I mean, they're giving it to you for the lowest possible cost. I always tell people, if you're going for that, you're going to sacrifice customer support and you're going to pay for some, when you have to do really hard things, you're probably going to have to pay for them. You've made up for that in low costs over however long that you've had them for. And if it's great, stay with them. Like if it's working for you, but that is one of the drawbacks to going with one of the very lowest cost providers that's out there, is that there's going to be things like this that come up. They're going to be like, as soon as we get a technician involved, all our margins are gone at that point. I mean, they make so little. GoDaddy makes so little money off of you and your host. They have to upsell you other services to make anything. That's where they make their money. Yeah.
The reason I started using SiteGround was one of the few people that would give you web hosting and an email address, because I was paying Google $5 a month for an email ad for one email address. And I was like, and they're like unlimited email. And then I never read the small print because it was like $10 a month, super fast WordPress hosting and unlimited emails. And I'm like, done. And a few people had also recommended them. And then I didn't realize at the very bottom, it's like $9 a month, first year only. And after that, it's like, wait, what was that bill? So it's like $20 a month, something like that.
On Maple Grove, I pay $10 a month, and my SSL goes like this. Christian, put SSL on there.
Yeah, there you go.
That's how that works. And it's pretty nice, right? I mean, it's a lot different. It's a father-son combo that are running this company, and I can't call him at 4 a.m. and expect him to pick up the phone. But it works out really well, web and media hosting, both for $10. And it's like, I don't know, it's just like a small town provider, right? I know the guy. Christian, put on SSL. Okay.
Yeah. He's like Alexa. You just say it and it happens.
Exactly. So it's so great. In fact, I don't even think, to be honest, I haven't thought about my hosting in 2 years. Like that's not even a thing. It's $10 a month. It's not even a thing. It works so well, and it just does its stuff. And whenever I need a change, he just takes care of it. So it's pretty great. It's pretty great having a boy genius run your hosting provider.
Yeah. I thought I had fixed, since we're talking website issues, I thought I'd fixed mine, but I just realized I have not. If you go to podcastingresources.com right now, it's an error message. And so I was talking with SiteGround, and they're like, when was the last time you scanned this for malware? And I go, I thought you, because I literally, it goes in, it renames a file. It's like class.php. And then I would go in and I see where it's like class.php .suspect. And I'm like, you guys are doing that, right? Like there's something going on and you rename the file. And they're like, no, we're not doing that. And I'm like, oh, that's not good.
Oh.
And I scanned it and I did have malware. So I bought WordFence, who cleaned it up yesterday and did find some stuff and did remove some stuff, but apparently not the thing that's wrecking my website. So that's always a fun little game to play. Speaking of things of fixing your website. So I liked it. It's not cheap. It's not super expensive. It's $99 a year and it does a really good job. They have a free version, WordFence. Yeah. But I bought it just because I wanted them to scan for malware, and they did find a few things, but apparently not enough. So I'll be rescanning that today when we get off. Speaking of other things that take longer than you think they're going to.
Yeah, another thing. I won't say it again. That's another thing that takes care of for me.
There you go.
WordFence has a new podcast, and it's pretty good. They could use a podcast consultant, by the way. Their sound isn't very good, and you know they could use a little bit of help, but their content is dynamite. So how did I know so much about the Zoom vulnerability? They just talked about it on their most recent, and I think it's called Think Like a Hacker. I think that's the name of their podcast from WordFence. And it is, if you're a podcaster and you're doing your own WordPress stuff, this is probably a podcast you need to add to your repertoire. It's not always spot on 100% applicable to everything. There was just a big security conference that they went through, and not all of it was applicable. But when it comes to WordPress security items, man, it is a must. So if you're not listening to that, Think Like a Hacker from WordFence. Pretty good.
I'll have to check it out.
Yeah, no, it'll make you smarter for sure. I mean, it is super nerdy and it's very over my head in a lot of, but this discussion, they had this 15-minute discussion on the Zoom vulnerability, and they were very, very clear about what it was and why it was and what did you needed to do and how to help people with it. And there's WordPress vulnerabilities all the time.
Yeah.
All the time.
The one thing that I've just gleaned, and I'm not anywhere near most of the conversation, is just by Libsyn having a plugin. So I can only imagine what, the guy from PowerPress. I want to say Alfonso, but I know that's not it.
No.
That guy.
Yeah. Keep going. It'll come here in a second.
It's not Todd. Daniel will help
Angelo.
Angelo. Yeah. I knew something with an A. I can only imagine because WordPress is a lot like, Angelo Mandato. It's a little bit like
Genius, by the way. Genius.
Yeah. Genius. It's a little bit like a snowflake. It's like everyone's a little different. And, we discovered that there's a plugin called Duplicate Post that does all sorts of weird things.
Yeah.
You're like, oh. So, and it's
they're finding those once a month now that there's a plugin that's gone rogue or whatever. And it's just helpful to know, like, again, if you're going to be your own WordPress administrator, it might be good for you to have some knowledge of what's going on. It's an easy hour every week just to get caught up on the latest vulnerabilities. It scares the bejesus out of you is what it does. Like, you're like, oh my God. Oh my gosh, I need to fix my passwords, or I need to make sure this is secure, or I need to not be installing. We haven't had this in a while where everybody just installs every plugin known to man. I mean, I think in the early days of WordPress, right?
Yeah, that used to be me. I mean, now I think long and hard before I plug in. I would just like, oh, look at yes, let's add another one. Then you find out later when you do some sort of speed test that your website takes an hour to load because it's installing JavaScript 57 different times. You're like, oh, how does it do that? So,
no, it's I haven't heard as much of it seems like the community has matured and not installing every plugin known to man. And then you're like, hey, my site's not working. And you're like, well, okay, start. Because the very first thing you do with WordPress, right, when your site's not working, you start uninstalling plugins, right? And they're like, okay, I'll be back in a month. Because they got 100.
Yeah, that's it. It's the old turn off all your plugins and then turn them on one at a time and go back and refresh your page. And eventually you'll see where, you'll turn one on and all of a sudden things go weak. Like, okay, the last one you turned on is the one that's causing the problem. And you're like,
do you like to go one at a time backwards? So in other words, say I have 20 plugins, just start at 20, 19, 18, uninstall until it fixes it. Or do you wipe them all out and start installing them one at a time to see what breaks. What,
that
what do you
actually might be. Yeah, I think your way is best because that way you're not disabling all of your whole. Because there might be plugins you need, so all of a sudden people can't share because you've turned
Right.
off the plugin and things like that. So that makes sense. Turn them off one at a time.
Yeah.
And
sometimes they interact against each other. So that can be, you turn one off and it doesn't, so that doesn't always work as well. But I think that's what I would do is just start enabling, test it, re-enable it, and deactivate the next one and just kind of keep doing that until you find something.
Well, that and the other thing that we haven't said yet, always make sure your plugins are up to date.
Yeah.
I've had numerous people that are like, yeah, this isn't working. And you log in, they have, again, every plugin known to man and 18 of them are out of date. I'm like, you are so asking to be hacked here. So I'm
and pay for some good ones. Like, put a few bucks into it and pay developers like Daniel for some good ones. Yeah.
Yeah. I've, that's why I'm surprised. Cause I thought I had WordFence on before. I had some sort of, like login detector blogger. Yeah, I had a bunch of security on it, so I don't even know how it got infected in the first place. But
yeah, that's our $99 a year for WordFence. Is that what the word? Yeah. Mike Howard, who we talked about earlier, he uses WordFence too, I think, and I've been using the all-in-one security thing from them, and it's just a free plugin that I use, and it's been fine. And I have an extra layer of security with Christian, but that's been fine for me. But I like these WordFence guys so much. They've given me so much value in the podcast.
Right.
That I'm kind of like, well, maybe I should throw them a bone and pay for the service, right? I mean, that's kind of what you should do.
Yeah. Daniel says I deactivate one letter at a time. So like all the A's, then all the B's.
Oh, that's a good idea. That's a good idea. That's a good way to do it. Yeah.
I hate troubleshooting WordPress, period. That's just when you get the white screen of death, you're like, oh, no.
It's been a while for me. It's been a while. I'll be honest. I haven't had to do that in a while. So I think I maybe have 10 or 12 on there. Maybe I try to keep it down just to as few as I possibly can.
Well, and the other thing, if you do deactivate a plugin and you're not using it, delete it. Get rid of it. So
actually remove the files. When you delete it, it should remove the files. If you do have access to your cPanel, or you can go into if you can FTP into the file structure, you can go to that folder there's a plugin folder. And you can see exactly what's on there. If you uninstall it and the file does not completely uninstall, you might want to consider. I check it first, but you might want to consider just deleting that folder right off the server.
And always have a backup of before you go deleting anything. Back up your WordPress.
Complicated thing to do in WordPress is get a good backup, and not get it, but how do you reinstall it? You need it.
That's why I love Managed WP.
Yeah.
And that was the thing that sold me on it, because I'm like, wait a minute, I just wanted to move my website to a new server, and there are better, more efficient ways to do this. But I had the backup. I put in the DNS and pointed it at the web host. So for however long, I just kept checking it, and all of a sudden it quit going to my website and it went to this like Hello World WordPress thing. And I went in and installed the Managed WP and said whatever the verb is that is escaping me, put back my website, and it did, and it worked perfectly. And I was like, okay, sold. Because I'd use, and there are other ones. There's a Backup Buddy has a cool thing, and this I forget there's an expensive one, Word Vault or something like that from WordPress has one. So there are a bunch of them out there, but I just happened to come across Managed WP and was like, well, this seems pretty cool. So, but holy cow, look at the time.
What a fast.
This was a fast Saturday.
That was a little.
Yeah. So now I get to go play with StreamYard and go, what's going on over here, guys? So we may go to Twitch just for fun once in July. Because I've never, because it's either going to be, I could do Twitch.
You can do both. You can
at the same time in stream.
I think you can. You should test it, but I think you can. Right. Eileen would know for
That's
sure.
True. One in doubt.
Hey, would you stay for 1 second after you hit stop? I just want to chat with you real quick.
Oh yeah, cool, awesome. All right, well, chat room. Thanks as always. Everybody have a good weekend, and always wear sunscreen.
See you guys next week.
Take care.